What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of BHR. This is Paul.
This is Patrick.
And just wanted to say thank you guys for hanging out and listening. We are putting this out a little bit late, but that's all right. Figure any content is better than no content. So
it's summer. We're a little busy.
Right.
There might be a few more coming up.
Right.
And then with you moving.
Yeah, I'll be moving in August, so there might be a short break during that time period for those listeners that are following our podcast.
But we have every intention to continue on the show after that.
Yep.
The quality might be a little different. We're going to play around with doing some over the internet podcasts, but
yeah, we should be able to get it all figured out though. But to bring you a little bit of local news, this last Friday, Vance Nisat was shot in the Super 8 parking lot. I think
it was early Friday morning.
Yeah, it was early Friday morning. 27-year-old from Minot, Ingliston, I think his last name was.
Something like that.
Yeah, walked up to Vance and his friend and asked for cigarettes and alcohol. And Vance said something along the lines of, you're too young, get out of here. And the 27-year-old returned with a gun and shot Vance. I mean, just absolutely crazy. If you look into his record, he does have some past with, I think, an armed robbery and some other felonies and whatnot, drug possession, all of that.
I was going to say, has there been any reporting on whether he was under the influence at the time or anything like that?
I haven't read anything at the moment. But I mean, I'm sure you could suspect that he was under the influence of something.
It's 3 in the morning. I would assume it at the very least alcohol.
But even at that though, I mean, it's so crazy that happened, and there's been a lot of death this summer already. I mean,
yeah, we're just barely halfway through the summer, and
yep, we've had multiple overdoses and now a shooting, which that's just crazy to think that a shooting occurred here in our town.
I mean, well, the worst part is it's not the first one.
Right.
How long ago was that when the guy was outside of the strip clubs and got shot in the face?
Yeah, on South Main. That one was pretty nasty. That was a guy from Idaho that walked up and shot him. I mean, I think that was like 3 years ago now, maybe 4.
Yeah.
But
I remember how mind-blowing that was at the time, but at that time it was a little more understandable because of everything going on with the oil field.
With the oil boom.
Right now we're kind of in a little bit of a lull. Like, oil's kind of doing better, but there shouldn't be as much crazy stuff going on.
Exactly, and it seems like that level of crazy, that plateau has risen, and so now, like, we just have the steady level of, a little bit of chaos, I guess you could call it. Which it just sucks because I know a lot of people have done a lot of comparisons to before the oil boom or all of that, but Williston was definitely a quiet little town before the oil boom. There was still drug issues, but we didn't have as many murders or deaths that I know of.
Not that got reported. And I mean, and we might not have ever even heard about this one on such a large scale if it wasn't, at one of the main hotels right downtown.
Right. Yeah. Well, I feel like we still would have heard about it because I mean, just leaving like the overdose at the Williston State College.
But again, that's a high-profile location.
Oh yeah.
So there was no way around that.
I think any well, and then actually, I forgot there was another shooting incident back just. I think it was like 5 or 6 months ago now, kind of bringing up like high profile locations, but maybe you might not remember this. There was 2 gentlemen that I think they were shot. Well, gentleman is questionable, but they were shot and killed in somebody's like apartment complex. Like there was talks of like the robbery and all of that.
I think that was last summer.
Yeah.
And I think the guy was selling a gun or something, and then they tried to rob him with his own gun, and he had more guns, and then he shot the 2 guys.
And that was like the main story. But then back like a few months after that occurred, the guy was arrested that did it, and they charged him with murder. So I think there is a little bit more to that story. I think his court case is coming up relatively soon.
Seems weird.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely more to the story for them to actually charge him with murder there.
And I think even beyond just the face value of the whole, like, trying to sell a gun getting held at gunpoint thing. I think there was some issues with how they were treating their children and stuff like that, if I'm thinking of the same story.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot going on with that whole thing.
Yeah, that's just a very unusual case there. And, you know, like, that's actually where we're going to leave our local news, is just kind of talking on that talking on that point of, with that shooting.
It's not small, but there's not a lot of information to discuss.
Right, there will be more to come for sure. But other than that, I mean, one thing that I personally would like to talk about, because it seems like it is in the news again, especially on MSNBC and CNN, they're doing a report, or they're basing their articles off of a poll where they are talking about how unpresidential Donald Trump is with his Twitter account.
Why do you need to post an article about that? Any person with common sense can figure that out on their own. You don't need a poll to tell you that.
Well, but this is my we do know there are things that he's saying that it's not presidential, but that level of how to conduct yourself when it comes to presidents, it does change. I mean, I think we talked about that last time, like how different people act different ways, and if he wants to talk about certain things on Twitter, let him. I mean, I don't see any issues with it.
I think the biggest problem is this is the first president that we see really dive into social media. I mean, Obama used his social media, but Obama was probably the first, but now you see somebody actually acting the way that you the way you traditionally expect social media to be, just kind of the trollish, say whatever, I don't care kind of thing, because you're online, and for some reason people think that you don't have any repercussions from what you say online. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and then I also one thing that I always kind of keep in mind when President Trump says anything is that he has the right to free speech as much as anybody else. Like, yeah, if CNN is doing a post on him, or if MSNBC, he does have every right to respond if he chooses to, you know?
And we've talked about this in previous episodes, how since he is president, we do kind of, in our heads, we hold him to a higher standard because, you know, he is the leader of our country.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's still just a human being.
Exactly.
I'm not making excuses for him by any means, but I don't think that it should be that shocking to see him acting the way he does.
No. And I mean, the part I don't get is how many people out there are still doing the whole "not my president." It's been 6 months. You can't continuously conduct yourself in that manner. I mean, and be treated like someone that actually cares about our country, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like, that's the way I view it, is that after 6 months of having President Trump in office, like, things definitely should kind of tone down a little bit.
I expected them to by now.
Yeah.
And to an extent, like a very small extent, they have, but
see, like, the other part of that is, like, the people along the left that align themselves on the left, they don't seem to understand that, in a sense, like, President Trump's, like, him actually getting into office is a backlash to 8 years of a very hard left-leaning president. And, like, the more that they continue to kind of push this extreme left agenda, the more of a backlash there will be. I mean, I think I've talked about that before as well, with that rubber band aspect. Whenever you pull something in one way, it is going to try to snap back. And that's what we're seeing right now, is a snapback of that left agenda. And now we're kind of getting back into more of, like, the extreme right agenda. And hopefully things will kind of start to mellow out in the middle again.
One thing that's weird to me is, I mean, most people know that every political side has an agenda, but how blatantly obvious you've seen kind of the lefter, news agencies, like, they're just so obvious with it. And it blows my mind that they're not even trying to be sneaky about it anymore. They're just like, no, we hate Trump. Here's our entire front page will always be about Trump.
Right. Yeah, that's the part that I find very unusual as well. And then I also find that in other forms of media and entertainment, where that the left's agenda is becoming more and more and more obvious. when you're watching certain movies, when you're watching certain TV shows, like let's just take for instance Saturday Night Live. That's a perfect example of something. When I was a child, I really enjoyed watching Saturday Night Live. I thought it was hilarious. Like, I felt like their content, like they had some political content every now and then, especially during like Bill Clinton. During that episode. But now it's just so much of like attacking a political party, right?
Well, exactly. Because their thing's always been poking fun at pop culture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's safe to say that right now the president is a part of popular culture.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're overextending with every week. It's like, we have to have something about Trump.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, we can let it slide this week. We'll focus on even something political, but not about the president.
Right.
It's always just bashing the president. It's like, get over it.
Yep.
I didn't vote for Trump. I don't think he's that great of a person, but he's the president. There's nothing you can do about it until he does something illegal.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I know that we kind of cut our local news short, but one really, really important thing actually happened, and it does have to deal with politics, or I believe it's the beginning of a political campaign already, is Mark Zuckerberg came to Williston.
That was really weird to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, obviously he's he created Facebook. He owns Facebook. So it's a technology thing. Like, somebody said something about him maybe trying to create some kind of applications or something to work with the oil field, but that just seems out of place to me too.
No.
And then there's the rumors that he plans on trying to run for president.
It is. I would bet money that it is the beginnings of a presidential campaign. I mean, he's going around, he's doing a countrywide tour. It's not just here, and it's not just oil field areas. He is wanting to get his name out there, and he is wanting to kind of go out and be a little bit more associated with that middle income, blue collar person, because that is one of the ways
that's the
Trump
majority
won.
of your voters too.
Well, exactly, and like that's one thing that Hillary overlooked, is she ignored a lot of the blue collar people.
Yeah,
she ignored a lot of the unions, and so if
I was gonna say, did she even come to North Dakota? Not that anybody really.
Fargo. She was in Fargo.
I understand. I realize the majority of the state probably didn't want her here anyway.
Right,
but I never heard anything about her.
She did. I believe she did visit Fargo, but. I think he's going to be just old enough to be president in 2020.
Well, is there an actual law? I thought it was always just traditionally they've always been
35.
35.
Yeah, it's in the Constitution. You have to be 35 to be president, which I think he'll be like
35
when he gets inaugurated. I think he'll be 35.
So he'd be running when he's 34.
Yeah. Yep. I mean. Which that would be interesting, but that guy, like, as far as his, from what I've learned or what I've gathered in the past, his political alignment is a very hard left. I mean, he's someone that has tried to befriend the Chinese to get involved with them and their social media, and I mean, it's kind of interesting because he's a blend of both left and right ideas, right? Mm-hmm. So everything is for business and for making money. You're talking about one of the top 5 wealthiest men on the planet. So to think that he is lacking any capitalist conservative kind of ideology, that would be false. So there is some of that in him, but then more of his social policies are that left-leaning, let the government do everything for you type of
Which I
message.
Think, it's interesting to see how that would work out because, like you said, he's a businessman. So there's definitely a part of him that's conservative. I'm curious to see which side would take more precedent if he were to ever become president. Yeah. I think it would definitely be the conservative side because
he would not.
He's about making money. I think he would campaign on liberal policies, but then when he got in the office, he wouldn't do anything as far as that, or anything that
unless it benefits him. I mean, like that is a big part there too. I mean, like he would not do anything unless it would help him out, I believe. Like it's kind of funny because everything that they're saying about Trump and like his businesses, which he turned over, right, to to certain family members to have them run it,
Mm-hmm.
and disassociated himself with that. Would Mark Zuckerberg actually even be able to do that? Would
Does he
be able
have
to step
anyone
away?
he could do that to?
Exactly. But, I mean, would he actually be able to step away and distance himself far enough from his businesses to be a successful politician or president? I mean, it's another very interesting type of way to look at a person. And I mean, this is on par with thinking Bill Gates running for office. I mean, Bill Gates is number one. Bill Gates is number one wealthiest person in the world, and I want to say that Mark Zuckerberg is like number 4, and climbing fast. Which, I mean,
Which is kind of crazy because what does he own? He owns Facebook, Instagram, and he doesn't own Twitter.
He doesn't own Twitter. No. There's some smaller entities that he owns as well, but he also owns a ton of land. I mean, the guy is extremely well off. But I mean, it's kind of interesting, like when you look at Trump and his connections with the Russia narrative, right? Like people always wanting to push that Russia narrative, but then when you look at Mark Zuckerberg and you want to talk about a narrative. Like, that guy has personally met and hung out with the leaders of China, a very, very communist country, that, they do show some aspects of climbing capitalism starting to form in that country, but there is still an extreme censorship there, and that's one of the reasons why Facebook isn't allowed.
It's been a big thing in the news the last couple of weeks, too, is they keep doing censorship.
Yep.
There was crazy policies with their internet, and then just recently, because people were associating the leader of China with Winnie the Pooh, they banned any and all images of Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. Yep.
Which, if anybody knows anything about the internet, if you try to get something taken off the internet, it explodes and becomes your worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like that's one of the justices of the internet, right? Is whenever you try to take something off, or that you try to go back on something, it can always be brought back up, right?
Yeah, that actually reminds me to go on a little bit of a side tangent. Last week, there was a protest by major companies on the internet where they intentionally slowed down their servers or had some kind of warning message pop up to raise awareness for what the FCC is trying to do.
Yeah.
I think Reddit was one of the few websites I went on that did it.
Yeah.
You go on there and it's like, this is what happens when your internet slowed down, and they made it take forever so you could log into Reddit.
Yeah.
Which I think that's really cool to see these businesses hop on board to,
And what is that called again? That they're doing?
So they're moving it. Right now, the internet is treated as a utility.
Yep.
So it's very hard for businesses to
kind of.
It's more regulated, but regulated at the same time. So the biggest fear of everybody right now is if they move it from being a utility to a non-utility, that broadband services and internet providers are going to be able to choose what websites move faster on their network.
Yeah.
So, say Comcast has their own video streaming service. They could bog down Netflix so you don't want to use it, and then you kind of boost the speeds on theirs.
Bottleneck you into their services instead of having it open.
Verizon is already, even though it's illegal to be doing that, Verizon is already testing some kind of things like that.
Interesting.
God, I don't remember what the application specifically was. I just heard about it on the news on Friday. But yeah, they're kind of testing, slowing down and speeding up things. I don't know if they're obviously probably not testing it on consumers, but just inside their own network. And the idea behind why the FCC wants to do this is because they don't think that the government should be regulating this. It should be open for a business to decide what they want to do, free market kind of thing.
Right.
But in the long run, that's going to kill smaller businesses, which on the internet isn't necessarily a big deal right away when you just say small businesses, because you can have a minor website. And
I know the counter argument to it is like, so what it would do is it will help grow those businesses or those service providers that offer non-bottlenecked internet, right? So like the service providers that say, we could throttle back your internet, but we're going to leave it open, they'll get more business. I know that is one of the counter arguments to it.
But there's no guarantee anybody's going to do that.
Right. Well,
whereas, even though there's no guarantee anybody's going to slow down or throttle,
right,
it's very likely.
Right.
And another reason people are so scared about it is you have basically duopolies in all of your areas. You have one, or you have 2 or 3 providers to choose from.
Right. Yep.
And in most cases, it's just 2. It's either internet or cable.
Yeah.
I mean, not internet, satellite or cable.
Yeah, or DSL or
And I think having those 2 compete may help, but it also may be worse.
Right. Well, like,
because one might throttle other ones, other websites than the other. Yeah. But that's still you're not just getting a free and open internet.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a interesting thing to consider there. And I kind of look at it in other business senses, right? So what has occurred is that you have these, like what you said, a duopoly or whatever. Just several businesses in an area, and they're the only ones providing a service. Now, just imagine if Walmart decided to up all of their prices. There's a lot of areas where small businesses have been wiped out by Walmart, and so if they raise their prices, there's really almost nothing for people to do. I mean, there would still be opportunity for small businesses to actually start up again, where they could offer the products at a competitive price, but it would just be so difficult in that economic environment. So it is interesting, and I for one, I consider the internet as a utility, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, we use it for fun and but there's so many uses for the internet that it absolutely should be considered a utility. 10
years ago, you could have made the argument that it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was, because it was still pretty fresh. Mostly just, for recreation.
Yep.
But now, I mean, the internet's tied into everything.
Yep.
And it's even tied into utilities in your home.
Yep.
It's a necessity anymore. I mean, obviously, outside of living in a society, it's not a necessity at all. But the way we live today, it's almost essential.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It should be interesting to see what actually happens, especially over the next 10 years when it comes to the internet, right? Because of how it has grown and evolved. And I mean, I remember when the internet didn't really exist. Like, I'm dating myself there, but I'm 28 years old, but I remember when the internet was something new and big, and when computers there was only one computer. I remember the time when there was no computers at my elementary school, and then when we got our first ones, and then had a computer lab and just watched it evolve over time. I mean, I don't know. Did you ever take any computer classes in high school?
I did. I screwed around a lot and didn't pay as much attention as I should have. We were required to take keyboarding in junior high and high school.
But I mean, now when you look back, when I think back on those days, and I think back on what was really taught, it's almost so irrelevant now that it really, in a sense, like, you not paying attention is perfectly fine, because what we've witnessed is the beginning and end of desktop computers for the most part.
I just took Windows applications, So I mean, I use some of that still today, but there's people around me that can help me learn how to use the program. So I mean, taking the class in school, may make my life a little easier, but
But even in the long run, with our technology and everything is just advancing so fast that those classes really don't, I feel, have as strong of a net benefit as what other classes might. But the internet, with it evolving, will this help with the evolution, or kind of slow down the evolution of the internet with this bottlenecking? And I for one, I think it'll kind of slow it down.
Well, and I just wonder, so okay, say that you bought into the argument that for it being a utility, it slows down business growth, whatever.
Yeah.
Could you also look at it as a form of censorship? Because you have a company, I don't like they won't pay me money, and I don't like what they're saying, so
exactly.
I'm gonna slow it down so people can't, see what their message is or see what their anything is.
That's a very, very valid way to, or very valid perspective on it. Is especially with that, oh, I don't like their message or what their ideology is, then their service that they provide is going to be damaged or hindered because of that. So like that, I feel like maybe there is some truth to that, where this could be a stepping stone to more internet suppression or censorship. And we've seen that in the past where the government has wanted to get involved, and I've heard rumors, a long time ago, I heard rumors of like internet kill switches or ways that the government here could turn off the internet, and like people were trying to push for that, which I think is terrible. It's terrifying to even consider.
Wasn't it Libya where they turned off the internet? And
in Egypt.
Egypt, yeah. And there were still people finding ways to get online and show us what was going on. But if you were to take away the internet, especially for some, very politically motivated reason that you don't want something to get out to the public, you would see riots.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I don't know anymore, because I mean, it seems like we're becoming more complacent. We're becoming kind of lazy when it comes to, I believe, the right things that we should be out there, rioting or protesting over. Because I mean, look at how far they're getting already, right? When you consider 2001, the Patriot Act, and how much of an invasion of privacy. When you consider the WikiLeaks drop, Vault 7 drop, and us finding out that the government is, in a sense, or has the capability of spying on almost every citizen in the United States.
Yeah, to me, Vault 7 was bigger than the Snowden leaks.
Yeah.
And it went away even faster.
Yeah. Yep. And are we coming to that point in our culture where we're ignoring the actual scary things, right? Are we ignoring the monsters that are actually in the closet, instead of, we're arguing over these other things instead of trying to unify on like these aspects that we should be fighting against, right? Like we should be fighting. I like I said, I'm for one where I will argue against net neutrality, and that's what that policy is being called, is where they want to.
No, we want net neutrality.
Or, yeah, we want net neutrality.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. It's going to be a very eventful. I think the next 10 years is going to be probably the craziest decade that we'll see in our existence. I mean, with the oncoming possibilities of war, to
possible major censorship by our government.
Yeah, the government censorship, the advancements of technology. I think that, in a sense, we're kind of living in like the 40s, right? Like if we rewound time, like we're living in the early 40s right now, where the next 10 years, everything is going to be changing. New weapons, new wars.
Well, hopefully some of the things that you saw in the 40s, we do see, like a huge boom in technology.
Yeah. Like during that time period, it was around that time period that the first heart transplant occurred. And I mean, revolutionized medicine. And now it has become an everyday occurrence where hearts are being transplanted. I know that right now.
Did they ever make that attempt in Russia to do the head transplant yet?
That's one thing I was just going to bring up. It was slated for this year, and then things changed, actually. So it was the surgery was going to take place in China, and it was a Russian citizen. There was some issues with having a Russian citizen go over to China and having this surgery done. And so that surgeon now has came out and said that, like, that guy that was going to have the head transplant, that's not going to be him anymore. It's going to be a Chinese citizen that will have the head transplant, which is insane. Like, if that actually goes, if that's successful, I don't know what that means.
I personally don't think the first time will be successful.
It has to be successful enough for them to do it again. I mean,
obviously they believe they can do it, but I find it hard to believe that you'll be able to reanimate the head once it's been reattached. Like I don't see any issues with the two working together. I just don't know how you would reanimate the brain and everything and get it going again.
But it's not so much like necessarily reanimate. Like if the organism is still alive, right? Like the cells, everything is still alive.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the reanimation that I'm concerned about. I've had a few anatomy and physiology classes.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing I'm really, really concerned about is something called your cerebral spinal fluid, right? So like when a woman goes into, like, she's gonna give birth, like some of them choose to have a spinal tap where it cuts off that feeling from the waist down. And the way that they do that is they go in and they like withdraw a small, very small amount of your
spinal fluid.
Yeah, your spinal fluid. And so it's like when you're talking about reattaching a head, I have no idea how they're going to go about regulating that. And it's so crucial to have that just the perfect amount. Otherwise, you're in insane pain. Like every part of you is not going to function properly.
Well, is there anything stopping them from once you're unconscious, because obviously you're going to be unconscious.
Yeah.
Draining that fluid and then re-pumping it back in there?
Well, so now when you do that, like, you could cause... There's so many issues with
air bubbles, things
like
that.
Not only air bubbles, but just like you don't want that membrane to collapse around the spinal cord.
Okay.
And so really what it is like you have your spinal cord, you have a membrane around it, and then you have a cerebral spinal fluid kind of in between the two. And so if they won't necessarily be able to drain it, right? So when they do this head transplant, what I think they're going to have to do, they're going to have to kind of cut it off in a certain point, reattach this head to the new body, and then basically this person that they're doing this with is going to go through hell on earth when he is recovering.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
but because obviously they're doing this to a paraplegic, correct?
I'm assuming that has maintained the same, where they're trying to find someone that has some type of terminal illness. So
to them, I think that if they're already willing to do this, I don't think they're going to care about that recovery at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll if they have any possibility of being able to walk around and move, I absolutely believe that they'll.
Right. Yeah.
It'll still be a struggle for them, but I don't think they'll care.
But I mean, just consider though, if it is even moderately successful, right? If they do this and this person survives, just even survival, right? Where they have some awareness, what that means for the future of the humankind, you know? Will this become more of an everyday case? And also, like, what this will mean is that we have, in a sense, like, to me, this would mean that not necessarily immortality, but that we have mastered more of that central nervous system, that we understand and we can track these nerves successfully to different parts in our brain, and we can kind of design our brains, right? Not necessarily design our brains, but design those paths. And what that would mean, I don't know if you watched. I don't think you've watched the movie. It's called Ghost in a Shell.
No, we were talking about that earlier.
The concept behind it is a robotic body that looks human with a human brain, but it is a robot, right? Sounds absolutely crazy and very sci-fi-y like, and that is what the movie is about. But that could very easily be our future if this surgery is successful. I mean, fast forward another 50 years and head transplants, brain transplants might become a normal everyday occurrence, just like how heart transplants are now.
Yeah.
It might be easier just to have a new body than to go through, other treatments of certain illnesses.
Eventually, yeah. Obviously, just because they successfully do it doesn't mean they're going to be able to train every surgeon to do that overnight.
Well, no, not overnight. But, and with, like, the spread of information because of what we were saying, like, with internet and everything, I mean, that knowledge, the accessibility of it will be much faster.
It'll be accessible, but there's a difference between the knowledge and being able to physically do it.
But consider like the 1940s and 50s when that heart transplant, like, we had that, it was a lag because of the lack of spreading. Like, if it's a successful surgery, those people are going to be learning how to do it, like, the next semester in their medical school. They'll be like, they'll be studying that surgery, those neuroscientists and neurosurgeons. And so that crop of people that could potentially be doing that would be immediate, Either way, though, it's going to be interesting. And I know there's a lot of ethics and morals people are starting to question when it comes to that stuff. There is people protesting this surgery, like altogether. But then again, there were people protesting the first heart transplant.
Well, and I can understand that. It's new, it's scary, it's, you're attaching a head to another body. Mm-hmm. I get why people are doing it, but it needs to happen.
Right. I mean,
for our species to grow, it has to happen.
Right. Exactly. And that's where I sit with it. I mean, I know that they were protesting the first heart transplant because even in that time period, I mean, we're talking...
That would probably be way scarier to them.
Yeah, 60-ish years ago now. People considered, the human soul, some people still... a lot of people still thought it resided in the heart, like that concept of the soul. And it kind of just goes to show you how far we have came in the last 60, 70 years. Mm-hmm. And then I hope that
how far we still haven't come.
Right, yeah. But I hope that I stay an optimist when it comes to mankind, that we will be seeing a bigger, brighter, better future. And I mean, there's just so many crazy things. And I guess that's why we do this podcast, is there's just so much random stuff going on all around the world. And we're just trying to put out our voices and what...
Well, that's the thing too, is we have these conversations whether we're recording them or not.
Right.
They may be, the tone's a little different, but I mean, that's kind of why we decided to share it, to kind of get other people's perspective. Is we'll sit and drive around and talk about stuff like this for a couple hours.
Yeah. But, and you guys, I know we've said this many, many times in the past, but you guys are more than welcome to join in on our conversations or to strike up a conversation with us outside of here. And just to kind of remind you guys again, I know that we started with this, but this next August, or this next August, I will be moving, so we'll have to figure out and see what the plans are after that.
Yeah, after this coming weekend, if we don't already end up being late on that one, I think that's when things are going to kind of start getting squirrely.
Yeah,
I'm going to be gone for a little bit, the beginning of August myself, so probably the first week of August, second week of August, I wouldn't expect anything.
Right.
We'll definitely create something if we can find time,
and we'll have to wait for me to get internet in Grand Forks as well. So
yeah, you probably don't want to record a podcast at a coffee shop or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, some of the topics that we talk about, I don't know if it would be interesting to. Actually, it would be really interesting to do that right now.
See if anybody jumps in.
Yeah, and that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, maybe we can try that sometime.
Yeah, I'm asking for a fight, but that'd be fun. But, I think that's a good spot to kind of call this podcast. I know it's a little bit shorter than what we've put out in the past, but I think that's all right. I hope you guys enjoyed this show, and we appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you.